So not doing the proper research and not defining yourself properly are the biggest and most common mistakes.
You are listening to Intangiblia, the podcast of intangible law, plain talk about intellectual property. Please welcome your host, Leticia Caminero.
Welcome to episode 4 of the 3rd season. On this episode, we're going to talk about the trademark. And sometimes to convey a message, you need a strong language. Let's welcome our guest and let's talk about trademarking yourself.
I'm Shondra Cheris. I'm an intuitive business strategist and life coach for entrepreneurs, creators, and influencers. And my career started years ago. I'm not going to date myself that bad, but I'll just say over 15 years ago. I actually started in entertainment and starting a business in that realm, then going through marketing, live events, private events, and then some government contracts here and there, leading me all up to what you know now, why I have all this business experience as it relates to trademarks.
Oh, very, very interesting. So you really went a whole transition into business
Yes.
Up until what the topic of our episode today, trademarks. So what led you to write this book? And can you please tell us the title with all the personality that it has?
Yes, and it's like a workbook too, so it'll definitely get you. So in the entertainment industry at the time, it was one of those things in which you needed to be able to define who you are and what you do. And because I was dealing with artists and music and live events, everybody had a live wire, right? So I was like, how do I distinguish my company, Livewire 99 Entertainment, from everybody else? And also, since there was all that downloading music and all of these other things, you would always see that people would Google it and it would be up all the time. So at that time, I was like, I need to be able to protect my brand, my business. And for me, that was through trademarking. So that is how I got into being able to trademark, which is funny because I never thought about using anyone else to do it. I did all the studying and looking up the stuff myself. And at that time, we had to mail in stuff still. So to see how it's changed from then to now is amazing. And people want to complain, but they just don't know, right? And so having that background doing that then, and then leading me to where I am now, because I was used to managing people, I transitioned that company and felt that that brand itself wasn't relevant for what I was doing now as a coach and strategist. So just a few years after I hit the 10-year mark, I was like, no, I'm not even doing it like that. I just needed to be the parent company of everything else that I'm doing. And then I moved forward with what we have now. Now, how did I end up writing the book, Trademark Your Shit? It's been talking to many entrepreneurs about their journey and creators and influencers about theirs and them not understanding that they're a business. So they want to get all in an uproar when someone is using their name or someone is copying something that they're doing, and they always think copyright, but they don't realize that there's definitely a difference, right? And so when you're trying to protect your good service, your brand, you need to protect it the proper way. So I was talking so much to them about how to do it. And they were always like, the other thing is people kept telling them, you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer. And in some cases and instances, I believe you do. Like, okay, so if it's a sound or something, fine. But I explain that to them in terms in which they can understand. But because I was repeating myself over and over again, like, just trademark your shit. Just trademark it. And they were like, fine. So my business partner kept saying, I need for you to write this down. I need for you to tell them in a way they understand. And the way you explain stuff to me, I understand it. So why don't you do it that way? And that's how the book came about.
So it came very naturally from all the advice, everything that you with working with the people you've been advising and working and having the same conversation over and over. You saw like, okay, there's a need here that I need to tackle in a more universal way, not person by person, but in a way that it can come across the message as broadcast the message that's of your knowledge.
Yes. Also, people don't like to read. And when you see the trademark books, that are out. I'm about to pick fun now. People are going to hate me for this. Everybody who's a lawyer, more power to you. I appreciate you. I do. I have some myself, so I'm there. But what I'm about to say is about to take some people off. When lawyers are coming out with trademark books, the first thing is the cover has their face on it. Why? If y'all don't believe me, go look up a book on Amazon or something right now, and there's some lawyer with their face on it, their arms crossed in a suit or smiling. Right. Every time I'm like, nobody cares. It's not about you. That's the first thing. The second thing was it gives them all of this jargon, much of which, no hate, maybe a little, that they just copied and pasted from the United States Patent and Trademark Office for here, external of the 5 that we partner with, right? They just copy and paste. They went and took whatever those trainings are. People don't understand that the information is accessible, but what I realized is they don't want to watch all that and they don't want to study all that like I did. So to put it in a way that's easy versus the whole copy and paste thing, like just because you give them credit doesn't mean you wrote the thing with your face on it. That blows my mind. It was like, how do I make this easy for people to just understand? And so it's not a whole bunch of like jargon they don't get. And I put it in terms that the everyday person can get to understand why it's important for them. But it's like a step-by-step guide that takes them to the process.
As a lawyer, because I'm part of the bunch, we are great at writing for lawyers. So we are very good at making sure that we do this technical analysis, the very legal analysis, very profound, and it's great. But to the common person who's running a business or creating a brand or an artist, it's not something that they need or they want in their lives. They only need to understand, okay, what is protectable? How can I do it? And how can I do it well? Or how can I not infringe on someone else's property, intellectual property? So they really need like clear guidelines that sometimes we as lawyers tend not to give, because we are also very, well, it depends, or maybe, or this. We're always thinking about all the craziest scenarios, but sometimes we forget the end user. We forget the person who is going to receive the advice, and that's something that your book rescues. So you rescue from the legal jargon, from the heavy legal analysis, and you give us a guide that it can be followed by anyone with or without a law degree.
Yes, ma'am. Yep, absolutely. I don't know how more simple I can put it, though. When they look at it, it even has, I make things that they need to fill out. When I put it for them to fill it out, it's because at some point they're going to have to expand on their definition within the process. Because I know that, because what I've noticed people do? Let's say they get past the first part, but they don't really know how to define their business. So if they don't realize that the trademark office deals in goods and services, but they keep going, but it's my brand, but they don't know what their good and services based on the brand, right? They get confused, but people are so used to using marketing terms that they don't know what they really mean. Like people are constantly saying that sales and marketing are the same thing. And as someone with a whole bachelor's of science, which means I study data and statistics, right? In marketing, they're not the same. So when people generalize it and they go, oh, this is the same, this is what I do, but then they get to whatever definitions they need to register their mark, then they're confused. Because they're like, I think I'm supposed to do it under this category. And I refer to it as a category versus a class because it helps people understand what it is, right? So if I think I do this under this category, but oh no, I see these things too, then financially they need to make the decision which one's more important at that time, unless they want to do them all. But then they think they're only limited to one thing. There was a gentleman he was registering his mark for finance, but he's also a YouTuber. So if you're saying you're doing finance and you're a YouTuber, as you know, there are multiple classes that can cover that, but there's one that can give you a broader scope of that coverage, right? But they don't know that. They don't know to look under this certain class in order to expand. They don't even know that they can. They just think if they check something outside of this, it's not going to work for them. But I'm like, man, you cover yourself in so many ways.
Yeah, and also the implications of selecting the class in the right or wrong way. So it can make or break your trademark protection.
Yes, and they'll do that too. And then they get declined. They can't figure out why. But you didn't do it right. In his case, that ended up happening because he used a third-party service.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, there are now rules in place where everyone has to do an ID in order to be able to register themselves, or they have to have a lawyer. So it's either one or the other. You can't have someone do it for you anymore. And then even if you're a lawyer and let's say you have a paralegal working for you, the lawyer must validate the paralegal now in order to do it.
Yeah, it's a way of protecting the applicant.
Yeah, but they don't see it that way. They're like,
why do I have to do this?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Exactly. So on that, at what point should the influencer, creator, entrepreneur care about applying for a trademark? So when should they start thinking about it, start planning, or start reading your book?
They should start reading it right away so that it sets them up for what they need to do. So in my humble opinion, and I know that I've heard many people that go, you need to do it right now. When you think of it, do it. But as someone who's had to pay the extra money in order to register my mark because it wasn't in use in commerce yet, I know what that looks like. And again, when I did it, I had to do it via mail because not everything was online like it is now. So as someone who's had to do that, I would say that once they start to use whatever their term and or name or whatever in commerce for at least 90 days or more, then they should look into registering it because they need that social proof that they're using it, right? But people don't know that. But the book, they should get it immediately because then it would help them with being able to, when I ask the questions I ask about how they define themselves, when they write that down, it would make it a lot easier for them when they have to show proof of how they're using it.
It's just in the sweet time you have decided to use the trademark, you have a plan, clear plan on how to use it. And before you do, that's when you go knocking on the door of registration.
Yes, because in my opinion, holding on to something to protect what you believe is your intellectual property. And notice how I worded that, because sometimes people will put whole sentences that are unrelated and they don't even realize that they could honestly do a whole paragraph as long as it's part of the image, logo, et cetera, right? I've seen whole churches and I'm like, my goodness, what kind of, who has, when I'm looking in the database. So seeing that, I'm like, okay, well, you go, right? But they think, oh, well, I have this whole sentence. This is what it is. And then they try to have it when they don't use it in commerce. And then they get screwed because they're like denied and they can't figure out why, because they didn't do all the other stuff, right? They didn't find who they were, what they were doing. So it's amazing to me. So yes, that's important because the moment they buy that domain, that's the other thing. They think that because they have the domain, they own it, and they don't. So it just blows my mind because I think, what I think part of the problem is people don't always think of themselves as a business. So as a creator and influencer, they definitely don't. As business owners, if they're doing something under the table, just to be real, like they're running a business out of their home and they didn't register jack and they don't pay not a tax, anybody, they don't realize that they're a business because they're like, oh, I just do this and I make money doing this. And it happens a lot. And then they can be doing it for decades even and still not realize, like, no, dude, if you're not paying somebody a fee, there's a problem. So because of that, they don't think I've not been using this, or I've been using this and I want to protect it. They think, oh, I got this logo or something and it's mine, or I use these words and it's mine.
Yeah, and then everything is great until they find a problem, or they find someone else using it, or they have an investor interested in them, and then the investor asks us, "So where are your papers?" And then says, "Ooh, I have nothing to to show you."
Right, they've been doing everything under the table, and also with trademarking, the biggest example that I give people because they think from our perspective, and I'm not sure what this is in other countries, that when they use it in their locality, so stateside or their region, right? They think they own it there. So what they'll do is they'll go and register it with their state because the state has a trademark. So they think that protects them in other places. And the other thing I'm clear on is your trademark via here in the US protects you to an extent with the partner countries that we work with, right? There's 5 of them. So those countries, there's a little bit there. You still need to go register over there, though, if you want to do some stuff over there. But still, there's something going on between them. But people don't even know that. Even in those lawyer books with their picture on the front, they don't even tell the people. Tell the people that.
Oh, God. And on that. So, yes, well, lawyers, we do have some sort of an ego. I mean, you won't find my picture in the logo of my podcast, but yeah, I can see some of my colleagues loving to see themselves everywhere.
Yes.
You are listening to Intangiblia, the podcast of intangible law, plain talk about intellectual property.
How do I decide what is my trademark? So how do I make the choice? Like, what is that I'm supposed to be registering?
So the easiest way for me to answer that is you have to look at what is common to you that describes your goods or services. Period. So if someone can recognize something that you're doing by a set of words or phrase that you say that actually represents what it is that you do, or if you have an image that represents what it is that you do, then that I think is very important. What's interesting is when I'm telling people what they should do, using words or phrases to me provides more of a protection than an image, unless you're putting it on packaging, because you're going to change. Most people end up changing what their logo looks like over time, right? But if you have your words or whatever name that you have or whatever made up name, if you have that marked and registered, then what you change your logo to doesn't matter. But, tomato. So
to have a clear identity. To have a clear identity, that would be the first thing to do. Like, how do I want people to see me? How do I want to present myself in the market?
And what's interesting, though, is some people don't even think, like, as an influencer, they don't go, oh, I'm this person. Like, they may have started doing blogs, right? And they're like, my vlog channel is like Happy Soul or something. And so they're known as Happy Soul all online. And they're like, oh, yes, everything's just great. And so they're putting it on their shirts, Happy Soul, Happy Soul. Then they get mad if someone uses Happy Soul. And you're like, but you don't own that. But you think because you used it, that's what it is. So Happy Soul, what do you want to say? Happy Soul is a movement. Okay. Because people will say that too. And you're like, Happy Soul is a movement of, positivity or whatever they want to say. But you also know that you're the one using that. So therefore, Happy Soul is your business, right? That's your brand. So when people go, you are your brand, that's not necessarily true. You can stand separate from that, but your brand will be Happy Soul. So that's what they need to trademark.
Yeah, it's important. Like, okay, it's a movement, but it's a movement that is your business. So register.
Yeah,
make sure
absolutely.
to protect your movement.
Yes. Now watch someone go listening to this and they're like, let me look up Happy Soul. Well,
it's a nice name, actually. I can see like a life brand, a lifestyle brand. I can see
absolutely.
It like that.
Yep. And then if you do it, come back.
Yeah,
let me know. I get 3%.
There you go. This is a verbal contract to whoever is listening.
Absolutely.
Oh God. So tell us your experience of trademark registration. So you had the analog experience, but you can also share the latest one that you also have experience in registering a trademark in the US and also keeping it. Because what a lot of people don't know is like the story doesn't end with the registration. You have to keep the trademark going, and tell us how.
Okay, so I'll start with the first one and then now the other two that I have now. So the first one, which Livewire I spoke about, and not using it in commerce before I register it, thus making me pay more money. The other thing that I did that was crazy is learn from my mistakes. But I mean, I guess they didn't have that definition at the time. So now that I gave them a definition to all those people that did anything with performing artists and whatever, you're welcome, because I paid the $350 at the time to write my own definition and then the $100 additional to show in 6 months' time that I've used it. So, right? I know I went the long way. So when I'm writing and telling you to do this stuff, I'm trying to save you because I've already done it. To where we are now with my travel business and then my name as you know it now. I had to make the decision of the classes and stuff that I wanted to use and to be able to show that I was using it in commerce beforehand. Lucky me, I did that. I did that through people that I work with, through posting online, things of that nature. And if you're not recording that, or at least taking pictures of it, start now or go back to whatever archive you have and look it up. It will save you time. So being able to define myself now, and also the way the system is, funny enough, I don't know how many of you all are aware of how the government here works, but when they invest money in these old MS-DOS systems, they still exist. So they just try to patch them and make them look cute to the public. So that being said, the system that exists now was the same system then, except now they found some way to pull from that MS-DOS to streamline the process all online. What has changed now is having to use ID me to identify myself. What has also changed is all of these definitions, because there are two different ways to register yourself. One, let's just say, I'm not going to give you the abbreviations, but let's just say this easily, is the definition that's the cheapest. And then one is defining it yourself that costs more. So those are your two options. When you go from those two options, I like to lean towards the one that costs the cheapest, and being able to take a look at what they define those things to be. And anytime that it allows me to expand on the definition, if you pay attention, they will show you examples to show you how you can expand on it. I do. So in one business, I was able to do it saying about teaching, coaching, also working with the different people that I work with that I mentioned here. Then the other business was about travel and how I book travel and things for my clients. So by doing that, it made it a lot easier in the system to click, check, and move on. Now, there are some more little tips that I give you about what browser you should use and things of that nature. And I learned, again, mistakes, i.e. sitting up late at night going, okay, I'm going to do this. And then the thing's shutting down when I'm in the middle of defining my stuff. There, you don't want that to happen to you, especially when you're in the home run and you know you're going to be done. So save yourself all that, because that's something that they don't teach you online or tell you online. You have to learn by trial and error. And now the fact that I can now pay online, I don't have to wait to mail in anything, because after a certain amount of time, they want you to show them still that you're using it. So when you do that, a filing fee can exist. Now, I'm only saying that because some people, if you want to take the long way and define yourself, knock yourself out. But what you don't realize is when that 10-year mark hits, if you haven't been using your mark for what you defined it for, because that's another thing, people change what they define it as, and they don't realize they should go back and register again for whatever the new thing, your transition is. But you are to pay a certain amount of money starting at right now, $500 per class that you're registered for. So class or category. So if I have two categories, that's $1,000 I need to pay in 10 years. So if you don't make $1,000 in 10 years, or you're not saving it on the side to cover it, when that expense hits you, you're going to be hurt, and then you're going to lose your mark. So that's my long, short answer.
No, it's great. It's a great, and for more details, you can check the book.
Right.
So with that, let's close with one of two of the most common mistakes and how to avoid them when registering a trademark.
Defining yourself improperly, and then not looking to see if someone else has your mark, which is interesting because you would think, or something close to it. People think, again, because they bought a domain, it belongs to them, but that doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't have it. So not doing the proper research and not defining yourself properly are the biggest and most common mistakes. And I learned about people not defining themselves properly, besides people just getting denied off the bat, because I was attending like a virtual seminar from the USPTO office in regards to people when they publish it, people going, hey, they're using my mark. And so this council reviews the mark and they're telling us what the highest levels of this is what's going to get you like declined or denied and what you have to do in order to fight somebody on it and what you have to have the burden of proof on. So that's what made me decide that those were the two things.
Oh, great. And well, it's all a matter of first reading your book, understanding the process.
Yes.
And to know also when to ask for further guidance and when to seek for legal advice if needed, because sometimes not everything you can learn by yourself, and some things you actually need some qualified lawyer.
Yes.
To help
I
you
actually
out.
put in there, you stop now. You need a lawyer if you got to do these things.
Yeah, of course. Makes sense. So thank you so much for getting the time. First, thank you for the book. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. And then I know that putting that down into words and making sure that it's approachable and it's interesting to read. It's something that's quite an endeavor. So thank you for that. And also thank you for joining us today and talking about your book and also your career. And hopefully we will see each other in another episode once the other books are out. It will be very interesting to talk about other topics as well.
Well, thank you.
If you want to tell us the full name of your book and where to find it and when it's coming out as well.
Yes. So Trademark Your Shit with a little exclamation point in between the I and the T. That's available now on Amazon via ebook. The printed version is coming out soon because I've had requests for it. If you want a PDF copy, which is less pages and on bigger like paper, you can just go to trademarkyourshit.com, spelled all the way out. So that's where they can get it and have it immediately right now. And then stay tuned for all the other ones coming.
Great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We have reached the end of our episode. See you next Tuesday with a new guest and a new IP topic. Greetings from Switzerland.
Thank you for listening to Intangiblia, the podcast of intangible law, plain talk about intellectual property. Did you like what we talked today? Please share with your network. Do you want to learn more about intellectual property? Subscribe now on your favorite podcast player. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Visit our website www.intangiblia.com. Copyright Leticia Caminero 2020. All rights reserved. This podcast is provided for information purposes only.